Sorry. Yeah, I just like the lights. It's just it's so bright. So anyway, first of all, I want to give respect to everybody in the audience and everybody that's up here on the panel. I really appreciate you all for coming out. And even that title that I have as hip hop artist is something that I make sure that I say humbly, because that's what I'm aspiring to do. That's what I'm constantly working on. And I feel like we are all artists. It's just that some of us, they just take it a little bit more seriously, expressing our art. And as an artist, I've always believed in the saying that art imitates life. And if art is supposed to imitate life, then we can, if we understand art, then we can understand life a lot better, because we have a mirror to look at, to look through, to reflect on, to see what's going on in our communities. We can actually see that reflected in the music, and the music is very powerful. So as an artist, I feel like I have a unique perspective as, one, being an artist, but two, being a professional that works with young African American men and women on a daily basis. And my responsibility is not to lose myself. If I want to write a song about having fun or partying or just stuff that, or going to the beach, whatever I want to talk about, then I should be able to do that. However, I have a greater responsibility to make sure that when it's time, when situations like this happen, like when we see all the uprisings that are happening all over the country with the Black Lives Matter movement and everything like that, then now is not the time for me to stand on the side and to promote the things that are more about me having fun or stuff that feeds into images that are readily available on mainstream media. Now is the time for me to actually reflect what's going on. So, like, one of the pieces I wrote, for example, is called Black Boys Under Siege, and it was written right after the Zimmerman verdict came down, and we were all mad about that. And I was just really irritated because at the time I was working for Propel Schools, and we had an initiative called Project Hope, which stood for Healthy Opportunities to Pursue Excellence, which was funded by the Heinz Foundation. Unfortunately, we didn't get funded again, but those 2 years that I was there, I was just really thinking about, how can I talk to these black boys? I was reading articles. How do you talk to, what does this decision mean for your children? How do you talk to black boys about what they should do when they're out there and they're confronted by somebody that could be a bigot, somebody that could be a police officer, somebody that could just be a neighbor that scares easily? Like, how do they deal with something like that? So, you know, the first part was like, black boys looking at me for the answers. I'm a teacher, so I gotta have the answer key. They want answers, but I lack the capacity. A master's can't solve a tragedy. Spitting with no limit on your masterpiece. And there's more, but I won't do the whole thing. But basically, it's just saying that if I don't have the answers for what it takes to help these young men and these young women out, then I need to go and I need to find the answers as somebody that's a leader and somebody that does. Part of the great thing about being an artist is that we're so sensitive. The great thing about being sensitive, but also having a vocabulary, is that when you're sensitive, when you feel something, you put it down on paper, and you put it down, and you put it in your music, and you record it, and you give it back to the youth in your community so that they can, even if something, God forbid, happens to me, then my words can live on, and they can have the opportunity to see that's what he was saying. He wasn't right about everything, but you know what? He stood up, and he was an advocate for me. So as artists, we need to be activists, and we need to be advocates for change, and I think that's the biggest way that we can help our youth. Absolutely. Here in Pittsburgh, you know, I learned how to drive out here. You know, I got a girlfriend out here. That was nice. And I got my real job. I got a car. Those type of things. So I've gotten to become a man out here. And what I noticed is that in Pittsburgh, there is, when we talk about black Pittsburgh, there's a lot of division. And I think that when there needs to be solidarity, there becomes competing agendas. So it's like we can't really collaborate the way we need to do, because we've all heard the saying about, you know, like something about, you know, one finger or something like that can't make a lot of punishment, but when you put 5 fingers together and you make a fist, then it can strike a mighty blow. And I feel like what happens is a lot of our movements, a lot of our initiatives are fragmented, and we need to be supporting each other. one of the things that I learned while I was researching the Million Man March is I was trying, as a man, sometimes I forget, I'm so focused on what's going on with white privilege that I don't realize my own male privilege over our sisters in our communities. And I think what happens is, and as the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan mentioned in the documentary, is that there was criticism about sexism. Like, why is it like this? Why are we putting the men up front? But after hearing Mr. Muhammad up here speak, I understand what he's saying about how we are the protectors and we should be the ones setting the tone for the whole community. However, that does not mean that we should elevate ourselves over our sisters, because I really appreciated, this really was an untold story, because I didn't really know about, I believe it was Cora Masters Berry, Marion Barry's wife. Like I didn't really know about her impact and her influence. And when you look at Dorothy Height and Maya Angelou and Dr. Betty Shabazz, you know, all these women that are doing great things. And I think that when we are doing these different movements and everything, we need to be conscious of, we can't be divided. We need solidarity in the biggest form. We're not always going to agree, but we can't get caught up in petty things like, well, and I say this as somebody that has contributed to some of that dysfunction, because I've definitely said stuff like, well, it's hard to be a black man than it is to be a black woman in America, but the bottom line, though, is like, if you're not an old, rich, white man in this country, then we're all struggling. So if you're a minority and you're gay, if you're a minority and you're Muslim, if you're a minority and you're black, if you're a minority and you're a woman, then we're all struggling here. So us having these little beefs and all this infighting is really what's dividing us. And I think that it's important in Pittsburgh for us, and I'm speaking directly to the young professionals. So when I looked at the Urban League before, we're looking at people that are between the ages of about 21 and 39. So that group right there, we're not necessarily the future, I would say, because we have a generation under us, but we really are necessary to making sure that Pittsburgh grows. And when you see that Pittsburgh might be, last time I checked Wikipedia, something like 27% black, and clearly we're mostly white. We need to, as young professionals, if we're going to come here and we're going to take your education and we're going to get our degrees and we're going to look all fly and fancy, then what we need to do, I don't care if you're a native Pittsburgher or if you're a transplant like I am, then you need to be putting something back into the earth as much as you're taking out of it.